that she wanted this to be a rom-com, and what they're saying is it's a twisted rom-com. We leaned on a lot, and we watched a lot of the older traditional rom-com movies. Harry Met Sally is like one that's actually referred to in the script. Things that really kind of tug at the heartstrings, and I think rom-coms have rules associated with them, so we knew we had to sort of play to those rules and give the people what they want, give them the meet cute, give them the the sort of friction between friends, and then we ramp it up to 100 with these deaths. So it was a real tonal balance, but we knew that we wanted it to fit in the rom-com world.
Hi, I'm Gordon Merkel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com. Of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional, and this week I'm joined by cinematographer Judd Overton, whose work includes Young Rock, Killing It, and the upcoming Laid for Peacock. Welcome to the show, Judd.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I guess my first question for you is, how did you get involved with this upcoming series, Laid?
Look, my relationship with the director Nahnatchka Khan goes back a number of years. I first met her. I was doing some camera operating for a friend of mine on Fresh Off the Boat, which was one of her earlier shows. And then, through sort of relationship struck up at that when Young Rock came up, we sort of I interviewed for that job and ended up shooting initially. The show was shot, it was sort of during COVID time. So the show ended up being shot in Australia, but all of the stuff with Dwayne Johnson was shot in the States. So I, was the DP for that for the first couple of seasons. And then on the third season, I actually, they moved the production to the States, and we shot in Memphis, moved all the sets across from Australia, and shot the whole show there. So then I was the main DP for that season. I did the first 3 episodes on that.
And then how did you get to lead?
Yeah, I think that was kind of like that relationship working with Nutch, then opened up some doors to do a feature film with her as well. Obviously we just sort of have a similar approach, and when this project came up, I had actually heard of the project because it was based on an Australian show from a number of years ago. Obviously, the take that Nutch has gone and Sally have sort of taken this on is a lot more contemporary and a lot more of a lot's changed in the dating game in the last 15, 20 years. So I knew this was going to be a kind of a hot take on it and a really updated version of it. But that was basically the sort of situation with my relationship with Nutch, going back now a number of projects. When she sort of put this forward as a romance, a rom-com, but with a bunch of deaths in it, I knew that it was going to be fun, and I know that she's got a real talent for sort of balancing that tone. It's something similar that we'd done in Totally Killer, which was a kind of slasher comedy, set in 2 different time periods, and she's just got a knack for, a lot of things. Super talented lady. She's got all of the casting and bringing the right people together, but blending this tone of like, how do we get to the depth of a real honest performance, but then also kind of blow that out in a way with some of these big stunts and sort of shocking deaths of all the people that all the exes.
I sort of got into VFX by accident. I always had a technical interest in photography, and especially as it relates to movie making. There's something magical about the ability to believe something is happening when it isn't. So I went as a live action producer into a company called Bob Abel and Associates. Then I would have to, have a meeting about how do we do this effect that's in this commercial, and I never got the straight answer I was looking for. I have camera knowledge, so it's like, since it's kind of ambiguous, why don't I just grab a camera and we'll try it out. You have to figure out what tells the story and use every trick in the book to solve your problem. I am Rob Legato, and this is my course on visual effects.
What was your favorite death to document?
I think the very first death, we see, they've already been to a funeral. They're coming home from a funeral, and she's chatting in the back of an Uber with a guy, Jeffrey, that she's had a one-night stand with. And then they have an argument, and Jeffrey goes and jumps out of the car, or, pulls over, jumps out of the car, walks around, flips her off as he's walking across the windshield, and a car takes him out, and he flies up and smashes his head through the windshield. So it was a pretty dynamic death, and we wanted to capture it in one shot. So that took a lot of planning, but it was also, it's the end of the first episode. So I kind of knew about that from the start, from the very first pages I'd read. And there was a lot of kind of, slow build up to exactly what we could do, how much we could do practically, when we were going to need stunts and when we were going to need visual effects to step in. What we discovered, or what we found we could do, was kind of a cowboy switch. So when the actor, does his last look to camera and then starts walking past, the front A pillar of the car, it was a great natural cut point for us. So we had a very small a crane arm with a Scorpio micro head in the back of the car, and that basically did a bit over 180-degree pan around, following him. And then as he crosses past this A pillar, then we changed to the stunt guy who's on a rig on a we had a big sort of crane above him with ropes on it, so that the last step and the collision with the car could be the stunty. So the actor hand over to the stunty, and then it was the stunty that was ripped out of frame and then dropped into the windshield. So yeah, it took a lot of planning to get it right. I actually sort of structured the day when we were shooting it so that the operator, I left the B camera operator, Chris Gibbons, who's an amazing crew up in Vancouver, we shot the show, and I gave him a good couple of hours, just with stunts, with SFX, everyone kind of being there to work out, the right timing and plan it all out. So by the time we got there, I think we did it in, I think SFX gave us 6 windshields that we could, smash if we needed to, and we did it in 4. So it was, it was pretty great. It went off without a hitch.
Wow. Now, I would love to know, like, how did you guys figure out the look and feel of the series?
Yeah, for sure. Natch had a really strong idea, that she wanted this to be a rom-com, and what they're saying is, it's a twisted rom-com. It's a dark version of that. So we leaned on a lot, and we'd watched a lot of the older, traditional rom-com movies. Harry Met Sally is like one that's actually referred to in the script. A lot of Julia Roberts movies, and even some more contemporary stuff like shows like Fleabag, movies like Bridesmaids, things that really kind of tug at the heartstrings. And, I think rom-coms have rules associated with them. It really is a genre of itself. So we knew we had to sort of play to those rules and give the people what they want, give them the meet cute, give them the, the sort of friction between friends, and all of those beats were there. And then we ramp it up to 100 with these deaths. So, it was a real tonal balance. But we knew that we wanted it to fit in the rom-com world, so that when people tuned in, that they would instantly, feel that warmth and feel that kind of connection, emotionally get involved with the characters. And then, the deaths, we didn't really treat them any differently, but we would take it more from Ruby's perspective. So we'd always tried to show it and her reaction to it, so that you're seeing something quite extreme happen, and what and how should the audience feel, and how would a character feel if they had just seen someone get smashed through a windshield in front of them.
I do have to say my favorite was the baseball player.
Yeah.
That one sort of stood out for me.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, to sort of to dig into that one. Again, a lot of these, on the page, you could do them either way. You could have it as an off-screen kind of sound effect happens, and it's like, oh, shock. But Natch really wanted to lean into the deaths. She didn't want to sort of pull any punches with that. So when it came to doing doing the baseball, the foul ball to the head is what they call it. We knew that we had to, I think the idea came that, how about it's like a slow-mo replay, like, in a sporting event, you're often seeing things, and how gross would it be to really see the detail of the moment of impact, and what would that, like, that would be the most graphic version of it we could kind of show. And to achieve that, we actually shot that on the Blackmagic 12K at 220 frames per second. And it was shot on green screen. Those elements are shot on green screen, and we comped in the baseball playing. That sort of world was put in later, and to get the effect, to get that sort of warping effect, we actually, we did a lot of testing, but it ended up being like a direct burst with an air cannon, just out of frame, that gave us the sort of the textural movements across his face, and then they added the baseball, VFX baseball in. They added the bruising and the blood sort of blood vessels bursting in the eye, and and obviously Big E was the performer there, and he just really sold it as well. A lot of it was just in his performance as his neck starts to wobble and he drops out of frame. Like I think the thing I really enjoyed about this project is how much we brought together all the creatives, all the fields to kind of achieve these deaths.
So what was it shot? You said the Blackmagic 12K, but like I'm assuming that other things, like it wasn't all shot on the 12K. And
that was just, sorry, go.
I was also wondering what lenses you guys went with.
Yeah, for sure. That was really just that piece, just for the slow-mo. That was the only, I did use some other Blackmagics in the show, but that was, they were just specific to certain shots or certain scenes. We even shot a couple of scenes on iPhones. The main camera was the Alexa Mini LF. We had 3 of those cameras, and the lens, the standard lens set was the Zeiss Supreme Primes. We had some zooms as well, but we mostly shot on the prime lenses.
What was it about those lenses that made you guys want to use them?
Yeah, we wanted it to be, again, it led in from that romance, the look of the sort of traditional romance film. So we knew that we didn't want anything too clinical. We didn't want a nostalgia kick, and we didn't want any sort of funky old lenses that had to feel kind of super contemporary. And we framed 2:1, which was again a more sort of widescreen or more contemporary aspect ratio. But the thing that I think when we found the Zeiss lenses, we just found that they had, they were super sharp, very contemporary, but they just had a touch of warmth, which I think really helped. It helps with the skin tones, and they were just a very flattering lens, on all of our performers. So I think that was the main reason that we went down that path. And then we have a number of scenes throughout where we kind of get inside Ruby's head. We really go inside, and some of those are the sort of romance moments when she either thinks that something romantic is about to happen, or when when the romance is really building between her and one of her love interests. And then there's also some moments where we use it for scary moments or realizations as well. But for that, we wanted to use an anamorphic lens, or we tested a lot of different lenses actually, but we landed on anamorphic lenses. We used the Cooke full frame for that, and we kind of went on a roller coaster ride trying to find exactly what the look for that was, because we didn't want it to jump. We didn't want it to seem like now you're in another movie, but we did want it to feel special. We really wanted to. We wanted. Stephanie Hsu is amazing performer. Delivering these sort of all this raw emotion and fear and love and expectation and hope. So we really wanted to just have moments where we could kind of push into that and connect with her. And often as not, those moments are broken by a death or some shock or surprise. So it's almost like a little bit of a false sell into the romance world. But we found that the Cookes were a great tool for that, in that the quality of the lens and the warmth of the lens was comparable to our Zeiss's, but it just just the nature of the anamorphic just gave us a really subtle fall off. It really just draws the audience in, to Ruby, to her headspace, and to her situation.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved
the classroom. I love the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
So, like, when you're reading the script, when you first get it before you've sort of signed on, do you start to make notes of like, I think these lenses, would get us in her head, or I think this sort of lighting technique might help reflect this, or do you wait until you sit with the director to sort of figure that out?
Yeah, good question. I a little of both.
Mhm.
When I first read the script, I just try to read it, from start to finish, and just enjoy it as a reader, as an audience, sort of the first audience myself. And then usually on a second read, I mean, sometimes there's actually a script will call out certain things or certain references, so that can be, that can help. And other things will just sort of come to me, whether it's some photography or something else that I've seen, or reference from another project. And then I'll start to put together. Sometimes it's a lookbook. I mean, obviously, I have a relationship with Natch, so we can often just talk about things and have similar, kind of history of now 3 or 4 projects together, but also, an appreciation for similar projects. And if I see something in a script or she mentions something, I'll sort of add that to my list and I'll go and research that as well. So it's just, you're kind of building up the document, or building up, even if there's not a solid document and photos on the wall and things like that. I think that's kind of more what we did for the feature. But for a show, we tend to just kind of have a mental list, and we might send clips back to each other, or images, or tools. Sometimes it does seem like a particular lens or a particular style. There's another scene in episode 7, which is kind of Brad, who is like the employee of Ruby. We start to discover that he's actually quite an unreliable narrator. So we go on a walk with him. He's with the girls. They're trying to track down, exactly what's going on. And he's telling a tale of, just a few drinks after work. And then we kind of get into, we sort of cut to what really happened. And for that world, where he's wasted and very drunk and sort of stumbling through the night, we knew we wanted to make that a particularly funky look. And we tested a lot of, we put glass in front. We actually went back to our tests that we'd done for the anamorphic lenses and kind of, does any of this work? Is any of this going to tell the right story? But, getting back to the references, we were looking at, things like Fear and Loathing and, like these really quite extreme visuals. And none of those were quite right. But, talking about them and seeing references and sharing images back and forth, would get us closer and closer. And then at a certain point, we would do a camera test where I'd actually bring a bunch of lenses. We'd set up a little scenario, which is, has some highlights in the background, or has some, some of the characteristics, some of the colors that we might be using for the actual scene. And then I'll show that to the director, and we can kind of walk through that together. And ideally, that's in person. We can kind of go to the rental house or a stage space and set that up. Sometimes, just by the nature of things, you're fitting that in on the side, and then you just show show a clip or show some stills from it, and we kind of make the decision that way. In the end, what we ended up going with for this scene with Brad was it's a tool called the Modulate Detuner, and that's initially it was like for a mirrorless camera. They have a range of detuners that kind of emulate or replicate some older, funkier glass. And the advantage of that is that you don't actually have to carry a full set of K35s, for example. When you just have this one scene, we can still put. Now they've got a PL version of this, and you can actually just add that to the lenses that we're using, and it gives that effect. It gives that distortion that we were looking for. So we ended up, sort of choosing our widest lens, and the nature of the adapter keeps the center of the shot reasonably neutral, It's still affected, but reasonably neutral. But then the highlights, get some really interesting distortions and that sort of thing. So that was kind of the method we used for that, and then played that whole scene with Steadicam. So we're leading and following Brad through this kind of drunken rambling nightmare, really. And we actually shot that on, I think it was the summer solstice, so it was the shortest night of the year. So we we knew we had to really move to achieve that. But again, we all went really swimmingly. We just kind of really stuck with Brad and kept it about him. And I think that's probably part of the language of the whole show is, finding these amazing characters and then letting them have their moment and letting that performance, really carry.
How much of the look did you get, want to capture on set versus work with the colorist to finalize?
Yeah, I mean, my colorist I've worked with for a number of years is Siggy Firstel at Company 3, and we will always, he's incorporated into those first testings, those sort of first look testings that we do, and what we'll do is I like to work, especially in television. I like to just work with a one base LUT if I can. Sometimes there's something a bit extreme for a certain scene, but most of the time I try to keep it like a K1S1, just a basic Rec 709 LUT, and then put a cube on top of that. So the sort of the looks that we're doing all come from one similar base, so that everyone in post, all the editorial and daily timers, color timers, all that sort of stuff, have one sort of consistent base level that they know this is our starting point. And then, so we sort of developed that look. Again, Nutch came in, and, with Siggy, and we had a look at, a few little very early tests just to sort of see, okay, how warm is warm, how cool is cool, what lenses are we looking at, all those sort of initial conversations. And that got us close to what our kind of show look would be, which is our kind of slightly more saturated, very nice skin tones, slightly warm, but otherwise, reasonably naturalistic. We want it to be to pop, but we didn't want it to be, candy colored and take people out of the world. I think probably, contrast is something that we really played with as well, because I think, we knew that we wanted this to be dark, in terms of dark shadows. And also we didn't want it to feel filmy. We didn't want the, beautifully lit women stepping into their perfect, finding their light.
Yeah.
So everything we played, a little bit down, a little bit, all of our sort of their key lights were always half a stop or a stop under, and the shadows were quite dark, so that we could really, keep that edginess, that sort of thriller undercurrent going through the whole project.
I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
It's a tricky one. I mean, I go back a few years on this. A show that I really loved was called Patriot. It was an Amazon show.
Yeah.
James Whittaker shot that one, and it's just one of those things that not many people know about, but it's just a beautiful, consistent tone. That's one of my, I'll often go back to that when I'm, embarking on a new television project and just go, this is what we need to be aiming for, really, especially there's so much good television being made. Obviously a lot of films now are on streaming. You really want to separate yourself and make sure that your project stands out from the pack. And I think, to be inspired by people that have done that before is, something I like to do.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Thanks so much. Good to speak to you.
And that's it for our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.